Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
Take a look at what they care about. Think about their money mindset, their relationship to money, and how they really feel about investing, because there's a lot of opportunity out there that women, underrepresented people are not getting to take advantage of. And I think it would be really cool if we could get a lot more people taking advantage of it.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman Podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Dawood, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode.
Planning for your legacy should be empowering. That's why we've partnered with Tim Gorman, author of Tangled Legacy, Turning Estate Planning Mistakes into Successes, your essential guide to building wealth and securing your family's future. Invest in your legacy. Learn more about workshops, classes, and one-on-one coaching at dgrealtyadvisors.com. Ready to go from financial stress to financially thriving? At Money Essentials for Women, we provide coaching and resources to help you reach your biggest financial goals with ease. From early retirement and debt payoff to home ownership, career growth, and more. Learn more and set up a free consultation with one of our expert coaches at www.money-essentials.com. Hi, Marcia. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I am so excited to talk about all the things that you got going on and a very specific topic. I don't think I've ever had anyone here in the show specifically talk about investing the way you do. So this will be very illuminating, especially for our fellow women entrepreneurs here. But let's get started. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm an angel investor, and I started by being invited to an angel investing meeting in 2012. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. What is that? I have no idea what angel investing is. Please help me, right?
That's nice.
And so I went to the meeting, and I thought maybe we would be like talking about the stock market, or I don't know. I had no idea, right?
Mhm.
And I saw some local entrepreneurs. I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time, and I was just so incredibly fascinated at what they were working on. So they were working on all kinds of different innovation. And I thought to myself, I've been working in corporate America for like a million years, and I feel like I've been living under a rock. Where have I been? There are all these really cool things happening and innovation and ways of thinking about it. And I was like in the same kind of routine, doing the same kind of stuff. So I just became totally fascinated. And I started following some different entrepreneurs, made a couple investments early on, and then went on to do all kinds of things like worked on different funds, which we could talk about, worked on how to like help people diversify their portfolio more. And then very quickly, I learned how little funding goes to women. And I thought to myself, what is going on? We're like 50% of the population. You're telling me we only have 3% of the good ideas, because that's about how much money of venture capital women get. So I thought, this is crazy. And as I started to talk to people, I realized the problem isn't that people don't want to do this, or they don't really think it's for them or whatever. They just have no idea it even exists. So how do we get more people talking about it? How do we demystify it? And that's kind of the mission I've been on now for a while.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And it is so true. Even if people have heard of angel investors, there's so much that is just not talked about and that I don't even know myself. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. What are some of like the basics that you could share with us for people that are kind of on the same boat that you were in? It's like, wow, this sounds nice, but I had no clue. I was living under a rock.
Yeah. Well, basically, angel investing means that you're investing with your own after-tax dollars into a private company. So we know a lot about what goes on Robinhood platform and in E-Trade with public stocks. It's pretty easy nowadays.
Right.
Back in the 80s or whatever, 90s, it wasn't so easy. You had to have brokers and all these things. But nowadays, it's pretty easy, right? If you try to invest in a private company, though, it gets a little murkier because there is no exchange that different platforms or websites necessarily.
Mhm.
But that has slowly started to change. And there is something now called equity crowdfunding, where people can invest for as little as $100. So a lot of myths are out there. You have to be rich, you have to be well connected, you have to be able to be invited. And probably like even 10, 15 years ago, that was true. But now it's just not the case anymore. And if you go on to, there's three websites, and we can put them in your show notes, that are really the ones who have the primary market share for equity crowdfunding: Republic, Wefunder, and StartEngine. And if you go on any of those, you can peruse and look around at what different entrepreneurs are doing, the types of innovation that they're working on, and people can get involved. And I just find it so fascinating that it's become so much more accessible,
Mhm.
but it's still something that we're not really talking about. So it's harder and harder until we keep talking about it for people to get comfortable with it.
Hmm. Well, I am so glad that you're raising awareness for this because, especially since it's more accessible, like what you're saying, more people could be doing it. They just don't know that it's out there. So thank you for coming on the show. And I know you have lots of resources and we're going to be covering them. What are some of like the guidelines? And I know you talk about this in your book, most likely, and all of that, but just for our listeners to be like, okay, well, this could be, an added stream of income. I could be doing good in the world. How do I, so you said go to these websites and peruse, what should they be looking for in terms of something that they're passionate about that, they think they could be contributing to?
Yeah, I always tell people I wish I had what I call a halo strategy at the beginning. I was kind of like, oh, I see this entrepreneur and they're doing something so great and I love it so much. And
Mhm.
I just want to help them. And then I would meet another one and I'd be like, oh, I love them so much. And this went on and on, right?
Sure.
So, and that can happen. It's very addictive to be thinking about helping other
Mhm.
entrepreneurs get started and get their innovation out into the world.
Yeah.
However, um, really focusing in on what it is that you care about and how much time and money you're going to put into that. Now, some people say, well, I don't really have any money, I can't invest. And that's okay, because some people might want to invest with their time. Maybe they have some kind of expertise. And I'm not talking about like you have to be a lawyer or a doctor. I'm talking like maybe you're a bookkeeper or you do something in human resources. All of these things are needed by entrepreneurs. So if we could get more people just investing with their time and their networks, that would also be extremely helpful. Then I hear other people say, well, I have some money to invest, but I don't have any time and I don't really have time to look around and figure it all out. Granted, I get it. Um, but in a lot of cases, what you can do is start to look around. Don't necessarily make an investment yet. I
Mm.
always tell people just start looking. You will be amazed how much you can learn just by watching the videos that they have on these crowdfunding sites,
Mm.
and just learning a little bit about what the company's doing, why they're doing it, and does it align with your values. And I'm a part of the Angel Capital Association. I was the chair of the board for quite a while. And we always say that you should really be thinking about investing in an alternative asset like angel investing. Think of it in like a bucket. It's like you have this small bucket of money. You really don't want it to be more than 5 or 10% of your investable assets. So it's just a small amount of money that you would invest, but that you would then take that and align that with what you care about and what you think would make sense as far as timing. A lot of these investments, because they're private, they're illiquid. And that means that you're just not going to get a return or a payout very quickly. So you have to think about that too. You don't want to be investing with your kids' college education when they're 15 or something like that.
Hmm. Okay. That's great. Great starting point. So don't go off and start investing right now
Right.
because you get excited.
Exactly.
Do your research and also think about the pros and cons because like you said you could be emotionally attached, right? But then the next one comes around and you're like, oh, this is so good. I love that. Those are great tips. Let's talk a little bit more about what you mentioned in the beginning. Only 3% of the funding going to women, especially since this is a show focused on women or in different ways that entrepreneurs are empowering other women entrepreneurs. I'd love for you to speak to that and why do you think that is and what we could be doing to turn that around?
Yeah. So let's think about like what's happened over the last like 50 years even. Women weren't even in the workforce until after World War II. And then now things have started to get so much better. They're not great, but they're better.
Mhm.
Women are going to college, they're going to get graduate degrees, they're becoming doctors, lawyers, everything imaginable, right? Which is great.
Mhm.
In investing world, it's a little it's slower, and it's still, we're still trying to catch up, just like women are pretty much in every industry and every sector.
Mhm.
So I think what needs to happen is we need to have more women in the decision making seat.
Mm.
So if we had more women who were deciding who was going to get the money, then we would have better odds of the women who are the founders getting that money. And I think it all comes down to, women are going to understand what women are working on in some cases better than they would if they were pitching to a room full of men. And I'll just give an example. I've invested in several companies that were about women's health.
Mm.
And women's health really does need to get a supercharge into getting some funding, getting all the attention that it needs so that we can get more and more innovation in that area. Well, if a woman who has a company that is focused on women's healthcare goes to a group of men to pitch it, and the men don't really understand what the problem is, they're not going to be very excited or motivated to invest in that. So you really kind of need to find investors in all cases, but this would be a good example of the investors that align with the problem that's being solved, and then how that company is going to bring that solution to market.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So yes, women, let's step on up.
That's right.
Obviously, we're doing our best, and men can help in that
That's
process.
right. And men can help. And that's the other thing too. It's like another part of like the awareness problem. How can we bring more awareness to this
Yeah,
so that people are realizing, wait a minute, I would like to see the innovation in this
yeah,
area. And it just so happens that, a lot of women are working on solutions for women's healthcare.
yeah,
And so we need to just be cognizant of that and really put that in the forefront.
definitely. Well, and speaking of awareness, since that is a lot of your mission, at what point in this process of you becoming an angel investor and learning so much did you decide, I need to create this awareness? I need to talk more about it, and going on and doing your TED Talk and publishing books and things like that. Tell us more about that shift, and after how long? How long have you been doing it? And then you decided, okay, I need to educate and spread the word.
Yeah, I think it got to a point where I started in 2012, and by 2016, I was just like, okay, how come I'm talking to so many people about this? And I would tell them a story about like an entrepreneur I'd met. And they would say, "Oh, that sounds so cool. That's really fascinating." I'd be like, "Yeah, you can get involved too." And they'd say, "Me?
Hmm.
Well, I thought that was only for rich people. I see those shows on TV and they'll have private planes and everything. So how can this be something that I can do?" And so I'd start to explain it, and then it was kind of like the whole thing had to be demystified.
Hmm.
And I just thought, well, it's not easy to say, and it certainly wasn't even easy to say in 11 minutes on the TED stage when I did that.
Hmm.
And afterward, I knew I had to write a book because so many people came up to me and said, I heard your TED talk and it was great. I'm inspired, but I don't know what to do next.
Hmm.
So it's all about like kind of what is it that we can do in order to help kind of grow and get this change out there that we want to see in the world. Well, it's a little it kind of has a flavor for everybody,
Hmm.
and it doesn't necessarily matter how much money or time you have, you can be a part of it. And so that's what I'm trying to demystify in the book and also on the podcast.
I love that. So tell us more about the book. What can people expect? How can they find it? What was the journey like writing it? That's something I like asking authors, because sometimes people think writing could take a long time, and obviously depending on the subject matter, yes. But I mean, my experience, it was more so the mindset of, is this really helpful? Do I have everything that I need? So how was that for you? Hey, let me ask you a question. Would you like to be my next guest on the Empowered Woman podcast? Do you have a story you'd like to share? Want more visibility for your business on a show ranked in the top 0.5% in the world? Well, then head on over to martasburke.com/podcast guest for more information.
So in my TED talk, I give the statistic that $475 billion annually in the US is donated to charity. But that equivalent is about 1% of the US stock market.
Wow.
So we cannot just think that charity is going to solve all the world's problems. I'm a huge fan of charities. I donate to charities all the time. I always want to do campaigns and help them. Okay. But think about that. 1% of the US stock market, it's not enough money for them to be able to do. And we're putting this terrible burden on them. We need to help. We need to surround. We need to join forces together. And there's so much that's going on in the for-profit space that just kind of gets left on the cutting room floor, as they say, because they don't have the funding. It doesn't get off the ground. I just kept thinking, how do we change this? Well, I just started laying it out in the book, and on the podcast. Like, this is what we can do. These are the things that we can do in order to try to make this better. So with the book, I have a couple exercises. There's a worksheet. I call it the Halo Strategy Worksheets, what I wish I had when I was going, hey, I love that. I love that. Right. How can I get more people to just kind of take a look at what they care about, think about their money mindset, their relationship to money, and how they really feel about investing, because there's a lot of opportunity out there that women, underrepresented people are not getting to take advantage of. And I think it would be really cool if we could get a lot more people taking advantage of it.
That's great. So you came up with the Halo strategy. It's
Mhm.
not something, oh, I love that name because obviously angel investors. That is
Yeah.
so cool. I love it. So is it like a framework, several different steps? Is that something you started with in your TED Talk and then you elaborate in the book?
Exactly. In fact, people can go on my website, which is just my name, marciadawood.com, and they can download the worksheet for free. It's super easy to fill out. It just is like 5 questions about what do you care about. Well, maybe it's not super easy because you have to really think about
Right.
it.
Simple.
What do you really care about?
Mhm.
What are the things that where do you want to see change in the world? How much time do you have? What are the things that you really want to be putting your money toward and your time? And how would that outcome, look in the future?
Okay, that's great. So people can go on the website, and you do have people can download the first chapter of the book as well, and
That's correct. Yeah.
check it out. But it's on Amazon, major platforms. Tell us the name of the book for our listeners.
Yes. Do good while doing well. Invest for change, reap financial rewards, and increase your happiness. And so, yes, you can have it on all forums, including Audible.
Love it. We'll make sure and have that in the show notes. Now, I wanted to ask you, like on the flip side, we're talking about people wanting to invest in businesses, but how can businesses position themselves to be the recipients of this and even get on these websites, or how does that work for somebody that is like, I want to have investors? How would we do even start this process?
Yeah, that's so interesting because when I wrote the book, I was really trying to, like I said, demystify this for people, get people to become investors. And I started to get a lot of entrepreneurs reaching out to me afterwards saying, hey, I really learned something about how I should be working on and thinking about how to fund my business. So what I tried to do in each of the chapters of the book is take one piece of what this whole investing landscape looks like and demystify that. So yes, equity crowdfunding is definitely something that people could do, but there are a lot of other ways to invest. And in some cases, if a company isn't what we call scalable, meaning that it's not going to grow into like a Google or Facebook or something like big company, that's going to get bought by another company or go public or something crazy. Well, then you don't have the type of business that a traditional angel investor would, put out thousands and thousands of dollars for. But there are a lot of ways nowadays that really didn't even exist 5, 10 years ago for a company to be able to raise money. And it might just be that they need a small amount of money and maybe even from their local community. And now all of those things are possible. So really going through the steps in the book and kind of going through those different chapters and learning all of the different things that can be done, I think then people start to realize, oh, if I'm a founder, now I understand the funding landscape and I know where I'm going to fit in. And what I really, really, really hope is that it saves the entrepreneur time. Because so often I see entrepreneurs just knocking on doors trying to get funding and they're like, I need money. And then they hear things like, well, you know what? You have to get 100 no's before you get a yes. I'm like, okay, That's a total waste of time, right? Don't do that. Don't just keep knocking on doors thinking, well, if I get here's another no, here's another no. That's not really strategic, right?
Right.
How do you get the money that you need for your company because of the type of business that you have? And every business is different, every entrepreneur is different. So it's
Right.
just a matter of like, how do we again demystify this so that so it's easier.
Yeah, that's great advice. And also great to know that in your book, people that are thinking on the reverse, right? They could still learn some things on how to position themselves and not have to go get all those no's going in the wrong places. Obviously, there is going to be no's, but if it's
Right.
not a fit to begin with, then it is a waste of time, like you said. Now, I'm super curious because you've been learning about stories of businesses for several years and getting acquainted with different types of businesses. So I'd love to hear some stories. Anything that comes to mind that you'd like to share on how the investment paid off or how passionate you were about it or whatever. I'm super curious.
Yeah, so there's a company called Joylux, Joylux, one word. And I've been an investor in that company for several years now. And it's a women's health company, and they have it, and I talk about them in the book. And I just think they are, first of all, they're doing amazing work because they're helping women with pelvic floor issues.
Mm.
Now, along the journey, it's been interesting because you really can't talk about pelvic floor things on like Facebook without it starting to people, the algorithms will pick up that it's like naughty and it's the bad
Uh-huh.
words and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So they get kicked off of like Amazon, Facebook ads, all kinds of stuff they've gone through. And what I love about the company is, first of all, their perseverance to help women's health, but the CEO, Colette Corion, is just so incredibly resilient. And she is just the type of entrepreneur that you really want to back because she is out there. She is making sure that her business is growing. She's pivoting when she needs to. She was one of the first CEOs I heard from on March 15th of 2020 when we went into lockdown.
Mhm.
And she was one of the first CEOs to raise her hand and say, hey, you know what? This is going to be hard.
Mhm.
And we better make sure that financially we're in a position for this. And she gathered all her investors together and we all worked together to help her figure out what she could do in order to stay alive. And not only did she stay alive, but now she is thriving. The business is doing incredibly well. And they just signed a deal with Halle Berry to be their spokesperson. And they have a joint partnership that they're working on right now to help women in menopause. So I was like, oh, so good.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I need to have her on the podcast.
I know, totally. Oh my God, she'd love that.
Oh wow, that's such an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing. I love that. Well, and while we're talking about being women and dealing with women's issues, I got curious about Marcia, the person, not just the investor. What are some of the things that you like to do for fun? How has it been balancing this business, this venture in raising awareness for this message and in your personal life?
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm the stepmom to three boys, and I came into their life a long time ago, about 16 years ago, and they are just lovely human beings. And it's so
Mhm.
fun to kind of watch them grow up and be a part of their life when I don't have children of my own. And I also just do a lot of yoga. My husband's job just took us to New York City. So now we're spending time here as well as in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mhm.
So we had to move about 8 times in 10 years
Oh,
because of his job.
okay.
Not all of it was fine. It wasn't anything bad. It was just kind of the nature of what you have to go through. But it really taught me a lot about just the ecosystem of entrepreneurship. It
Mm.
taught me a lot about resilience and how to kind of know where to go and what to do and how to get through different things because you were never kind of in the same place all the time. And now I feel like we're more settled and we have a place in Charlotte and then we come to New York every so often. So it's really it's kind of, and all the kids are in college. So it's all good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing all of it because this was so inspiring and enlightening for sure. Before I ask you how people can connect with you personally, besides going on Amazon, finding your book, and all of those things, I have my $1 million question that I need to up my number and say $1 billion or something because I have so many amazing accomplished entrepreneurs coming
That's
on the
right.
show. I
That's
need to
right.
increase my numbers. But I have a $1 million question that I ask all of my guests. Are you ready?
Ready?
Marcia, what is an empowered woman then?
What is an empowered woman?
What is an empowered woman then for
Oh,
you?
oh, So I believe that an empowered woman is somebody who really just gets things done and doesn't let other people's opinions matter. And I know as a young woman, I let that happen way too often. And nowadays, I just think to myself, you know what? I'm going to do what I think is the right thing to do. And I'm going to let that be my guide and not worry about what other people think. And to me, that is a true empowered woman.
Yes, I love that so much. And I think it definitely comes with age, right?
Yeah.
Comes with age, having children and other responsibilities of business. I always say marriage, parenthood, and entrepreneurship really have a way of holding up a big old mirror and showing you the things that you
Yes.
sometimes are in denial about. So I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. How can people connect with you?
They can just go to my website, marciadawood.com. Everything's there, including a link to the podcast. And I did put the podcast in like a playlist now, because sometimes people like, oh, I want to know more about equity crowdfunding. Which of her podcast episodes is that? So I try to categorize them for people to make it a little bit easier.
What is the name of the podcast?
It's called The Angel Next Door.
Ooh, I love that. So besides reading the book, watching the TED Talk, they can go and binge and have different specific examples of the intricacies of angel investing. So definitely have that in the show notes as well. Well, thank you again for your time. And I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends, or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.